So how many people have bumped up against scalability problems? Anybody? I talked with at least one person. So we talked about this last time. I gave a lightning talk, and I just talked about some very basic fundamental principles for just addressing some performance issues.
You probably want to get a mirror and
Yeah, for sure. But before I get into this stuff, this is what I'm going to talk about today is like a basic kind of talk about just a few principles that we bumped up recently. There's a couple bigger things that I want to talk about. So in particular, the thing that I mentioned last time was improving the performance of your Meteor projects. And I was mentioning to Nick earlier, like for us, we're cranking out these blog posts with a lot of code. The unfortunate thing about that is in addition to when we go to search for stuff, Meteor whatever problem, you get Meteor, like Russia Meteor shower, problem results, right? That's the number one thing. And what we're finding is that we're finding our own stuff in answers to our questions, which isn't really helpful. And in addition to that, I was telling Nick, we had a developer who, he had a problem, he went on the web, he found the solution, and then he realized that the solution was from our blog post, from somebody else who had posted that. So it's kind of a problem, right? We don't have very much information here. And for the most part, we're trying to solve problems that we rely on Google, right? Whenever you have a problem, what does Google say? And so it really comes down to us. Whenever we have a problem, whenever we have some sort of an issue that we find a solution to, we've got to contribute back. You've got to go on the web, put it on Stack Overflow, make a blog post, tweet about it, whatever you can do, because this is where it starts. We're at ground zero, and it's all of our responsibility to do that. So I just want to preface this with that. The next thing I want to preface this with is that, if you guys think about like what we're doing right now, we're like the prehistoric man, like going down the Kalahari Desert with like our loincloth and the sun's like beating down on us, and like we're drenched in sweat, and we're just looking for what's in the Kalahari, like a buffalo or something. I don't know. I don't even know what you would be hunting in the Velociraptor? Okay, yeah, sure. Okay. So we're trying to find our food, and what is the food? It's like that production app. We're trying to get this thing out. And the problem that we always come back to, and what I talk about in this blog post, which actually got more traffic in 2 days to our website than all of 2012. It was like, it got a lot of traffic. You're not a genius and your idea is probably dumb, and lessons that I've learned from my own dumb ideas. Because the thing that we've got to keep in mind is we've got two things kind of stacked against us. The first thing is we don't think like everybody else. We think like entrepreneurs. We're in here because we think like entrepreneurs. So we've got these wacky ideas. They're crazy, Some of them are really great. That's the biggest innovations that we've had in this century have been crazy ideas. But most of them are going to fail. And so that's kind of like a stack against us, but at least we're trying. The other thing is we're probably fairly systematic folks. That's why we're here. So the tendency that we have is to like get it really right, get it really good, put a little bit more polish in it. And the business of pushing out apps is the exact opposite. You need to just be pushing. This guy in the Kalahari that's running across the savannah, or if that's savannah, I don't even know. We've just got to like get to that end. We're running as fast as we can. And the moment you start slowing down, that's dangerous because then you probably won't finish. We're just barely going to be cranking in on fumes as it stands right now. So this kind of blog post, I talk about that, like a lot of the principles that we can use to test our ideas. But this isn't what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is this blog post, and then I want to share with you guys a couple other things. So the principles here that we kind of bumped up against is, I originally named these like the 5 lessons, and then I got some feedback that like the first lesson was 90% of the blog post, and the last lessons were like two sentences. But it really kind of boils, so I took out the lesson aspect. It's just a H2. But there's a couple things that we discovered in our scalability of our app, which I'll show you a picture of here. A shameless plug. So we do resource planning. Let me log out so you don't see all my company secrets. This is what we use to plan all of our companies, like resourcing. This came out of a problem that we had in actually like being able to keep track of all the things that we have in progress, all the things that, all the new leads that we have coming in, all the things that our clients need, but they don't know that they need yet. And so we're not going to tell them because we don't have time to do it. And then once we have time, we'll tell them. And then the last bit is all the unbillable stuff, because does anybody here have like a services firm background? Anybody? So you know the game. I mean, it sucks. It's like you're scrambling to get this stuff done. So, and you're always scrambling for people to get these things done, and you're always looking for new work. So the last bit is the unbillable stuff, like coming here. One of my developers is here. I'm paying him obviously to come here. So that's an unbillable project. I'm paying for that. At the end of the week, does my profit from my company pay for the unbillable stuff that we're doing? And how about every month? And how about every quarter? And how about every year? And when do we need to start really putting a lot of energy into filling up our pipeline for biz dev? And when can we kind of crank back? And what this has helped us do is, I've used this analogy once here, but I've used it like 100 times in a bunch of talks, is like our consulting firm is kind of like a little 4x8 foot planter in our backyard, and we've got this little nice garden, and we've got these vegetables in here, and we're growing this fruit and these vegetables. I could take this analogy really far, but I'll spare you guys. I'll end it pretty quick here. We've got this profit, and we can put that towards applications that we can spin up. And when we do that, and when we can visualize it with an app like this, it becomes really powerful, because we can say, okay, great, we don't want to take on that client. They're kind of crazy, or we don't want that project, that sucks. We're not going to do that. And because we're selective, we can raise our rates. It's just a really kind of virtuous cycle. This application has helped us do that, and we're solving a lot of really big problems in the services firm and selling your time. But the problem that we had is, like you kind of saw before I logged out, is that you can make all these cards, kind of like Trello. You can assign your resources, you can make people, you can assign your resources and schedule them out. You can see how your time that you've actually worked in integration with Harvest and Toggle and all these third-party time tracking systems work with your project management system like Jira or Basecamp or Pivotal or whatever you use. It's pretty sweet, but the thing that I want to share with you guys, and coming back from this journey of our first week of our app just repeatedly crashing, is that we're wasting a lot of cycles and we don't even realize it. So if you look at all the examples on Google, the first thing you see is kind of like this example of like, okay, well, you have Meteor as client and you have Meteor as server, right? And generally in these examples, you'll have like, okay, Meteor as client, and then you've got your subscription, and then you're defining your collection out here, and it's available to both the server and the client, and everything's great, right? So that works. The problem is, I don't know how much you guys know about what Meteor is actually doing in the back end and the server that's actually using the memory or allocating the memory. If you were to do a set timeout and output your memory every half second or every 100 milliseconds or whatever, what you would see is that you start off with really low, like Meteor's baseline is around 50 megs, and then every new person that comes, it starts adding on the load on the server. So you're looking at this in the console and whatever logs you have. Is everybody with me? You guys understand what I'm saying? So basically, you'll have a user that comes, and then it'll jump to like 65. Then you'll have another user, and it'll jump to like 75. And you'll get up to like about 120, 130, 140. Then it'll kind of start leveling off, or not. You might actually just have a bunch of traffic come to your site, and then your server is taking like now 400 megabytes, and it's crashing because Modulus or Heroku or Nojitsu is now shutting down your app, or you've just run out of memory. So we're trying to figure out like what's going on here. Why are we using so much memory? Meteor.com got millions of visitors, on their launch. I mean, they got a lot of traffic. I don't know if it was millions, but it was a lot. So how are they doing that? And our app is crashing after like 10 people come into the website, right? That sucks. So what we discovered is that we've got a lot of data, and we're passing some stuff, to our permissions or our subscriptions to say, okay, for the user ID, send me all the cards that belong to me. Here's my user ID. And if you're logged in, that's great. It's like, here's my user ID, give me all my cards, and show me all the data that's associated with me. So what's the problem here, right? When you're anonymous, this is kind of like a PHP term, when you're unauthenticated, you come to the website, either a Google bot or just somebody who checks out your website, they don't have no intention of visiting it. They're subscribing as well, right? Okay, but that's no problem because they're not going to get any data. How does Meteor know that? Meteor doesn't know if they have no cards, right? So Meteor is going to say, okay, here's 20 megabytes, tell me if you want to use it. And then you're like, well, I'm never going to give you anything, right? You're not even authenticated. Nobody knows that. So this is the big problem, is that Meteor is maintaining a pipe to this client every single time they come to your site, if you don't do this magical thing that I'm going to tell you about in just a second. So if this isn't your situation, that's fine. But I think it's definitely worth considering, is that you notice that we're doing this stuff if they're the client. We don't ever look at authentication. And then we're also doing this stuff we're defining the collection if they never even used the collection. So that's kind of a problem. We've got these local client connection or collections defined when they're never ever going to be using it. Or they might at some point, but why are we wasting our time with it? So here's what we came to. First thing we do is we say, okay, are you the client? That's what we were doing before. But then we say, but is your user ID undefined, right? Are you anonymous? Are you unauthenticated? If that's the case, if you are not, if you are authenticated, then give the subscription, because you're only going to need this when you're actually subscribing, when you're actually authenticated. And this is a reactive function. So what happens here? The user comes, it says, okay, you are the client, but you're anonymous, you're unauthenticated, so I'm not going to give you jack, right? And then the moment you log in, it's a reactive function, so it's like, oh, okay, here's your subscription. And then it gives you the cards and maintains that pipe. When you first log in, too, when you first make a new account, you don't have any cards either, but you are going to get some as soon as you make one. So the next little bit of code here that we have is we say, the collection, right? We have kind of like a more complicated condition here. Are you the client and authenticated, right? That's what we did above. But the collection needs to be defined for the server as well. So we need the definition for both. And the server obviously doesn't have authentication. So we're defining it in both cases there. This bit alone, there's a little bit of magic right in between these that I'm going to tell you about in just a sec here. But this little bit alone saved a ton of memory. I mean, now we're scalable. But had we not known that, our app would have crashed, and it did. So the next little bit in here that I wanted to tell you about is that we discovered that it's not actually the case, right? Some pages we want to have authenticated data to, if they are, even if they are anonymous, right? Like the API, because for a number of reasons we didn't use the standard Meteor protocol for our API. And then also, if we have this thing where you can expose a really long MD5 hash to your developers and let them see their schedule. Well, you're anonymous there too. We don't want to have a developer go make all this authentication stuff. So you can just give him a link and say, okay, here's your schedule. And he can log in, but he's unauthenticated at that point. So he needs to be able to go view this data, which the collection or the subscription needs to reveal to him as an unauthenticated user. So in this case, we use the Meteor router function. How many of you guys have seen the name Tom Coleman and Zoltan everywhere? You guys are here. Zoltan's over here. I'm going to talk about another thing here, but these guys have made like 99% of all the packages out there. How many would you say? What percentage would you say, Zoltan? Yeah, I mean you're making contributions too. I mean this guy's like he's like, I don't know what he's like. He's just a crazy man. He makes all sorts of stuff. So they made the router. He made the router function or the router package, and so we use that and we say, is it the front page? If it's the front page, then prevent all this stuff. Otherwise, if you're doing the API or you're doing the unauthenticated users, then show it. But that's the point to all this, is that there's a lot of conditions for your apps. There's a lot of waste that we're doing, I suspect. So it's up to us to identify all the parts that we're kind of wasting resources, because it all adds up. When you're in your development environment and it's just you, everything's great, right? And the moment you open it up to everybody else, things come crashing down. So we need to have the tools to kind of like figure this out. And that kind of memory thing was how we solved that. It's really kind of tricky if it's not your server. But yeah. So to that effect, I know I'm kind of running out of time. What's up? What's up?
I have a question about the technique for not sending down extra data. How does that differ from just checking the user ID in the publish function? Because if you publish an empty set of data as a client, I would have expected that wouldn't have such a big memory footprint.
Yeah, I don't know. We talked with Nick. The question was, how is it any different than requiring the user ID in the publishing function? The basic fundamental principle is that Meteor doesn't know whether you are going to send anything or not. It's making the connection, and it's saying, okay, if you have stuff, send it down. I'm going to wait for it, right? I'm ready. And that overhead is what adds overhead to the server. So don't even get all that set up. Don't even get in the catching position, right? I mean, you're never going to get anything. So you may very well be able to, we do require the user ID in that case. I mean, but you are still subscribing, right?
Yeah, but the subscribe message should just be like an empty, like one DDP message down. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that.
Listen, I mean, we checked it, we tried it. This is what we found, and we confirmed with Nick. So there's some overhead with an empty connection. So try it out. Do a set message. But we found that there is. The other thing, Nick suspected that this, and Nick's the co-founder, one of the co-founders of Meteor, suspected that this would have a role as well. There's whole blocks of code that we're running, right? That may not ever need to be run that you're sending down to the client. So there's a little bit of an issue there. You could wrap some of that stuff. Are they authenticated or not? So we just want to kind of shave this stuff down so that we're only dealing with the absolute minimum that we need to. And you would hope that an empty collection or an empty subscription wouldn't have any overhead, but we found that it did. So here's the other thing. Nick was telling us, so this was just stuff that we found, and then he kind of confirmed it. The next thing is when you're doing your query, Meteor, so you have these two concepts. You have you can pass an index, and that makes things a lot faster in your query. Mongo's already super fast. But Meteor, the way that Meteor can look at processing your query is the only thing that it can really use that makes it really fast. It kind of like short circuits or hardwires this like really fast hack into it. Not hack's a bad word, but just like a really big shortcut is if you pass the _ID to your query. If you can pass that to your select or your update, things are going to go way faster. So at any point, that's going to be ideal. Try to do that whenever you can. And let's see here, some pages, static post. So I talked about some stuff as well in our previous blog post about not making stuff reactive if you don't have to. You can actually pass a constant regions parameter, and that will make the whole bit like not reactive in actual code, not just a query. You can make static queries or non-reactive queries, or reactive queries non-reactive, but you can also do that with templates. So that's something to keep in mind if you don't want this stuff ever to be rendered again, like the front page, right? You may not want that to keep re-rendering because it's only going to show up once and then it's done. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I wanted to cover a lot more stuff, but I'm kind of out of time. So I just wanted to point out that every time you waste 10 megs of unnecessary server memory, a kitten dies. Guys, don't kill kittens. It's just not nice. So questions? What do we got?
So you had that code that only subscribes based on certain conditions, but that wasn't in a reactive block, right? So what if I go to some page that's not front page, and then I go to front page? How does it know to then define the collection?
If you go, it was reactive. The user ID is reactive.
Yeah, but it has to be within reactive block. It has to be in some sort of devs auto run in order for it to be reactive.
Yeah.
No, it's outside.
Where was this?
Go down to the next code snippet and go to the left. Right, there's no auto run block that surrounds that is client, user ID, router page.
The order is wrong. It should be outside outrun.
It should be outside outrun?
First outrun and then you.
Yeah, I just put this together.
That's not actually your code that works.
I'm sure we could, even if it is the code, it works. I'm sure we could optimize and whatever. The point of all this, like what I said, you're running down the Kalahari. Like we just need to get stuff out as quickly as possible. This does work. I know that for a fact this absolutely works. So, maybe at some point, no, this may actually be wrapped in some other function. I don't know. This is just a snippet of it.
The reason I care is it's in an auto run block. It may be run multiple times, and then you're defining the collection multiple times, and I just don't know what that does.
Yeah, I don't know the context of this.
Yeah, if you can't declare a collection more than once,
It dies or
it throws an error.
so you can't have that not run.
Yeah, there's a trick you can memo it, but yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Cool. Yeah, if you have ideas, if you see, I know that this runs error-free, but I'm sure there are ways, and this is the collaborative stuff that I'm talking about. If we find things that you think that you could be doing better, I don't program a lot of this stuff. I've got guys, my developers, and I just kind of look at it and contribute a little bit here and there, but I kind of guide stuff. And originally I programmed a lot more, and I was talking with Nick about how your application can very quickly kind of get away from you in terms of your mental kind of capacity. But I'm sure my guys you guys could have like a 3-hour argument about these kind of finer points about stuff. And I can put you in touch with the guys who can code it. What's up?
Do you already have an example app that shows kind of the best practices of what you have been subscribing?
I have our app that we've done the stuff in that we've learned from.
It's open source?
It's not open source now.
If you are interested, the Meteor Roles example apps, there's actually two. There's one for mini pages and one for router.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to work
I would
with
love
guys.
to, yeah. That was really cool what I was looking at, what you were showing. Because I think that's definitely something, the next step that we're going to have is like, in terms of our app, I know we're out of time. We've now got the app, everything works, everything's great. You know, the clients, we've got customers and everything. The problem now is that we're going to have to start really looking at how to limit certain things to people, so that only certain people see certain stuff. And, you know, that's the next big problem that we're going to have. So,
I'd be happy to work with you to figure out, like, you know, have an example of this is like basic and then this is like super optimized.
yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, that'd be great. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.